Welcome to We Married the Family podcast series, where I explore the realities of life with in-laws. I'm Dr. Nadia, a counselling psychologist and founder of We Married the Family, an international support group and coaching program for daughters-in-law. As a psychologist working with many women who live with in-laws, there's a reoccurring theme that I've noticed in a lot of my work with daughters-in-law, something that's equally strange and baffling as it is common. And it's the theme of invisibility and insignificance that daughters-in-law feel. It's like their needs don't matter. At best, this is ignorance, and at worst, it's a dehumanisation. This can happen on a bigger scale with events that are more difficult and traumatic, but it can also happen on a day-to-day basis. If you continue to deny, ignore, dismiss, even silence and shut down your wife's struggles and her feelings, then there's a big problem. When a situation like this occurs, there's a couple of things that I think about. I wonder what the husband and wife expected before getting married. And some of these expectations are things that I'm going to talk about in today's episode. I also wonder if they knew individually how to care and nurture another person, if they knew how to hold space for somebody else's emotions and even their own, if they were emotionally aware and emotionally intelligent. It's not about having all of this under your belt beforehand. Obviously, that does help, but marriage is the perfect ground for developing in these areas. You're with a person day in, day out, and naturally, this person is going to be giving you feedback every single day, in the positive moments, but also in the difficult moments as well. Every upset, every argument, every disagreement is a door towards connection through vulnerability and a door towards self-improvement. This is why conflict is necessary in a marriage and very useful as well, but it needs to be healthy. So what is it that happens in a family dynamic and relationship that erases the existence of a daughter-in-law or goes some way in making her feel invisible? One of the issues is right at the beginning, when a daughter-in-law is just expected to move in with the family without a single consideration about her needs, her feelings, or what the whole transition is like for her. And this expectation is something that comes not just from the husband, but his family, his parents, also her own family and parents, and even sometimes from herself. An expectation to adjust to a whole new family, a new city, sometimes a new country, and a partner without anyone asking her if she's okay, or how she's finding it, whether there's anything that she needs help with, and how she's feeling. She is expected to make this massive move as if she's going for a walk in the park, and that expectation already dismisses her experience. Then you have this new role that she's in. Instead of being embraced as a new family member, many daughters-in-law find themselves occupying a silent role, where they're expected to take care of the home, the people within it, without voicing her own opinions and feelings about anything. Decisions are made for her, decisions about the home, about meals, about holidays, sometimes made without her involvement. This lack of acknowledgement and frequently being sidelined can lead to feelings of low self-worth and alienation and isolation. In both of these instances, the expectation of the transition and the expectation of silence around her presence contribute hugely to her invisibility. But these things are often not intentional. They're usually not done through something malicious or evil within a person, but they happen out of people following tradition. We hear a lot about the importance of validating feelings and how hard it is when your feelings are invalidated by others. But this experience goes beyond that. It's not just invalidating your feelings, but invalidating your existence. It's like saying not just that your feelings are not valid, but that you are not valid, that you don't matter. Over a prolonged period of time, this type of invalidation can lead to struggles with self-identity and emotional stability. Another issue that contributes to the daughter-in-law's invisibility is the triangular relationship between a daughter-in-law, her husband, and his parents. A husband will often feel caught in the middle. I totally get this, and I do see this as well. I can see how this happens. But when he's unsupportive towards his wife in favour of his parents, even when they've wronged her, that is going to negatively impact the marriage. Again, it's saying that her needs and feelings don't matter, because they're being dismissed in favour of other people. And if the tension in this triangle isn't resolved, then it can create distance between the couple. The daughter-in-law who is invisible now becomes a wife who is disconnected and withdrawn. Tying into this point is also the hierarchy of the home. I've got a previous episode on hierarchical family dynamics, but essentially the in-laws maintaining an authoritarian position means that open communication is difficult or even discouraged, and that respect is often expected bottom up from the daughter-in-law towards her in-laws rather than being mutual. And again, it's not always about animosity. Sometimes it's a simple lack of understanding and following tradition blindly, which leads to the failure of seeing the daughter-in-law as an individual with her own feelings and needs. On a slightly different note, a daughter-in-law's upbringing and personality also plays a part in her invisibility. If she's someone who's been taught to not rock the boat or fears other people becoming upset or angry, she'll find it hard to share her feelings, even with her partner, which then maintains her invisibility because she's not being seen or heard, because she's not speaking or sharing these really important and authentic parts of herself. She may already be bringing with her into her marriage a belief about herself that she doesn't matter and that what she says isn't important. So a large part of the work here is for the daughter-in-law herself to start validating her own inner processes and experiences and start valuing herself. This is also an example of where something that you think is an in-law issue is actually something to do with yourself. But one of the biggest things that I feel contributes to this invisibility, alongside the expectation of following tradition, is the fear of resistance, of going against it. And this is from everyone involved, but most significantly the husband. I really don't understand how a husband or his family can ignore the distress of his wife. I mean, I get it in the sense of the reasoning, but on a human level, it really baffles me. Being so quick and persistent to dismiss your wife's hurt and pain is really dehumanizing. And I'm talking about things like ignoring your wife when she is absolutely distraught about something, when she's crying in front of you and you just walk out the room. And when she's telling you again and again that she does not feel comfortable with something, that something is really bothering her, that she is feeling angry, that she's feeling sad, she feels like she's lost her motivation, she is feeling that she's lost herself, and she's telling you this, and you just ignore her. That's the part that I really struggle to grasp. Being so quick and persistent to dismiss your wife's hurt and pain when it's so visibly in front of you is really dehumanizing. And if you're blind to the suffering of your partner, then what does that make you? Is it that you're ignorant, immature, egotistical, oppressive even? Or maybe you're scared and unsure and anxious and you don't know how to deal with this. But acknowledging her feelings doesn't mean that you have to right there and then make a decision to change something. Acknowledging her feelings and opening a conversation around them and around her experience is at least a really good place to start. The defense mechanisms that come up here, like avoidance and denial, are ways that you protect yourself from the responsibility of change. And these mechanisms are harmful to your wife and to your marriage. If your wife has expressed that she's unhappy, you can see she's lost her smile. She's not who she says she was. She's crying a lot. She's become bitter. And you both haven't sat down and given real care to this. Then years later, you're only going to be in a worse position. There's a really brilliant phrase that I've picked up from one of my teachers, which is, whatever you resist persists. So the more that you keep resisting this difficult and unpleasant, uncomfortable stuff that keeps coming up in your marriage, the longer it's going to go on and the bigger it's going to become. She is feeling invisible because to her, you're showing her that her needs don't matter and her pain and suffering doesn't matter. And while she's feeling this, there's still this expectation of her to maintain interactions and relationships with your family on a daily basis. Whether she's doing things for them or not, she's still interacting with them. She's still waking up with them. She's still coming back home to them, whilst feeling all of this difficulty that hasn't even been acknowledged, addressed, or sat with in the marriage. You can see how unfair and unjust this is. And this isn't what marriage is about. Usually every person in a system can facilitate positive change. So firstly, from the husband's perspective, he can work on being more open rather than defensive when it comes to listening to his wife's feelings, thoughts, and opinions. He can work on addressing misunderstanding without blaming, which can get you a lot further than if you turn away or become critical. And this isn't just about problematic areas, it's about everyday life, generally being more open and attentive. And the more you can do this in day-to-day life, in quote unquote just normal, non-heated situations, the more likely it is that you'll be able to bring this approach to situations that are more sensitive and difficult. The husband is also a key figure in the relationship between the daughter-in-law and her in-laws, like I mentioned about the triangle relationships. So he can use the privilege of this position by being a bridge. He can gently bring her into family discussions and decisions. He can keep her in the loop and ask for her thoughts around things. And there's loads of different ways to do this. It doesn't mean, putting the spotlight on her when you're sat down with parents and 6 siblings chatting about what your nieces could do during the holidays. It could look like coming to your room at night and letting her know, we were just talking about the holiday plans. Do you have any ideas? This is what so-and-so suggested. What do you think? Or sending her a text whilst you're at work after being invited to your sister's for dinner. Saying something like, my sister's just messaged me for us to have dinner tonight. I know you've already cooked. We can decide what we want to do when I get home. Or if you notice that your parents often comment on your wife's dress, just asking her privately what goes through her mind when this happens. Acknowledging that it must be hurtful when they say these things and how does it feel for her. Or if she hasn't visited her parents for a while, acknowledging that. Saying something like, it's been a while since you went to your mum's, how are you feeling? Do you want to make a trip? As a daughter-in-law, I'd encourage you to communicate your feelings instead of bottling them up. I see this a lot, daughter-in-laws try and do this because they think that they're keeping the peace, they don't want to cause any issues between the husband and his family or between herself and the in-laws, only to then later realize that things just feel a lot worse for her. So practicing communicating earlier on in the marriage rather than leaving it till later when things feel really huge to carry. Choosing non-confrontational but firm language can help with this. For example, if there's a discussion that's been happening and the family are deciding something, instead of being confrontational and blaming, you could say something like, I'd really like to be part of this decision. And that can open doors without sparking a conflict. If you do already share your feelings but you're still ignored and you still feel like you don't matter, it's worth getting individual therapy or couples therapy where you have space for your feelings to be heard and the sharing can be mediated by a third person. Often daughters-in-law worry a lot about the impact on others if they share what they're feeling or what they're thinking. You have every right to your own opinion, as does everyone else. And not everyone will like to hear from you, but that doesn't mean that you stop sharing. Not always anyway. In some situations you might withdraw because that's just better for you, but every situation is different and your approach will be different with different people. For in-laws, having empathy is really transformative. Taking time to get to know your daughter-in-law as much as feels comfortable, asking her about her preferences, involving her in discussions. These things can make a huge difference to her sense of feeling welcomed and feeling like she belongs. And also recognizing that the couple does need their own space and autonomy to grow and strengthen in their marriage. If the marriage is strong, then the family also feels the impact of this in a positive way. It's important to remember as well that the traditions and expectations that we have aren't inherently wrong. They're rooted in community and culture. But as families evolve, their dynamics need to as well. By learning to view the daughter-in-law as a family member rather than an outsider, by really seeing and acknowledging her pain rather than turning a blind eye to it, and by addressing conflicts with openness, our homes can become supportive rather than places of stress. If you've benefited from today's episode, do like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you've been affected by anything discussed in today's episode, then seek the support that you need. You can join my daughter-in-law's membership group via the link below or book in for one-to-one therapy with myself or another therapist.